remember if it was my big fat Greek wedding or if it was just my strange fascination with Greek mythology as a child, but I've been wanting to go to Greece for a very long time. I planned my trip actually entirely from scratch. I also did it about barely a month before I left, which I've noticed I have a very bad tendency to do with some international trips, which doesn't make it the most budget friendly. But I did have an absolutely wonderful tool to help me plan it, but more on that later. How do you get to Greece? Most likely an airplane. I actually flew Delta out of JFK directly to Athens. It was about a 9.5-hour flight. Not gonna lie, I do love Delta, but I also chose them even though it was a little bit more expensive because they were flying Airbus and not Boeing, and that was during the whole like crazy Boeing fiasco. How to get around. Once you land in Athens at the airport, you can take either a bus, the metro, pending they're not on strike, or even a cab. Once in the city, you can actually walk around pretty easily as well as take the metro. Tickets for the train are about €1.20 a piece, or you can also buy multi-day passes. I felt very safe taking this the few times that I did. However, because it is just a big city and it is public transportation, just still be safe, watch your stuff because there are and can be pickpockets. I also had no problem using Apple Maps to get everywhere that I needed to go, and I'm sure Google Maps is probably also just fine. What time of year should you visit? Peak time is typically in the summer, early fall, and the crowds are going to be absolutely insane. I actually recommend going off peak. So I visited in mid-late April. The weather was a little bit cooler, but there were significantly less crowds. So what would you pack for a trip to Greece? It is going to depend on the time of year. I did pack for slightly cooler weather, and I also did my best not to overpack. I primarily took loose linen pants as well as shorts and a pair of jeans. I took about 5 tops and only 2 pairs of shoes, which yes, is just so hard. Who's a good cell phone data provider? You're probably gonna want some sort of data while you're there to be able to run searches, to be able to get around. I recommend Olafly eSIM. I've used them for a couple of trips now and I've never had a problem. I had their, I think it was a 15-day eSIM with data, and I even had a temporary Greek phone number, which came in extremely useful actually when our rental car in Santorini had a hit and run. However, my data was pretty much perfect the entire time I was there in Athens, Crete, and Santorini. Their service has consistently been really good, so I highly recommend them. If you did want to give them a try, I do have a link in the description for 5% off. What are the best spots to see in Greece? So this is going to depend on where you go. I went to Athens, Delphi, Crete, and Santorini. So for Athens, I would recommend obviously the Parthenon, which is part of the Acropolis. There's also the other ruins around that square, which include Hadrian's Library and the ancient Agora, and they also have the Archaeological Museum. If you're going to go to Delphi, I would recommend obviously going to the ruins. They also have Delphi Archaeological Museum there. You can also go to this cute little town right next to it called Rakova, and you can have lunch there. If you're going to Crete, I spent way too little time in Crete. At least if you're going to the Heraklion area, I would recommend the Palace of Knossos. You cannot miss that. In Santorini, I would recommend the Akrotiri archaeological site. It's basically Greece's version of Pompeii, only it's 2,000 years older. It's a very, very cool thing to see. I'd also recommend going to the volcanic islands. You're able to book tours. I did do a tour there. I can leave the link below for the one that I did if you're interested. If you want the picturesque version of Santorini, then I would recommend going to Ia. That's where those famous 3 blue roofs are. It's also an amazing place to see the sunset. How long should you go to Greece? I would really recommend going for at least 2 weeks. I did 9 days. It does take time to travel between all of these places because it was my first time and it was one of the more extended vacations that I had. I was trying to see as much as I could in those like 9 days that I was there, but going from mainland and islands is a lot. I would probably recommend condensing your time into the really specific places you want to see, and you're probably just gonna have to go back a couple of times. Maybe 1 week mainland and then 1 week on an island could be a pretty good way to break it up. As perspective for the timing to get on the islands though, if you do go to the airport and you want to take into consideration as well time for getting through security, checking bags, all of that stuff in air, it's usually about an hour flight from Athens to one of the islands. It took me about an hour to get to Crete. However, if you want to go the ferry route, it can take a lot longer. It could be anywhere from 2 hours to 12 hours. Travel takes time. If you're trying to bounce around as much as possible, you can spend a lot of your vacation just trying to get places. Spend time being in the area rather than just trying to get everywhere and see as much and burn yourself out. How do you get to the islands? So as I just kind of said, you could do an airplane. There are a lot of small budget airlines that will take you to the islands. However, if you're trying to go island to island, you you will probably have a layover in Athens. Otherwise, you could take a ferry. I really recommend Sea Jets. They are the most expensive. They are the fastest. So it was about 2 hours from Heraklion to the port in Santorini. There were some other providers that I think took closer to 4 hours, but for me it was worth the extra money because, as I said, now I'm spending less time traveling and more time in destination. Where are some good places to stay? In Athens, we stayed at a hotel called Epidavros. It was in Ammonia. Do not stay in Ammonia. I should have done a little bit more research before booking this, so this is 1000% on me. It is a rougher part of town. It just didn't feel very safe. However, on our last night in Greece, when we flew back to Athens the night before we came back to New York City, we did stay in Marathon at the Ramada Athens Club Attica Riviera. It's a long name. It was beautiful. Highly recommend it. It was actually the best hotel that we stayed at, I think, the entire time, but right by the ocean, so that was nice. In Crete, we stayed at Heraklion Hotel. It was this really cute hotel in downtown Heraklion, and they had free breakfast, and they were just very polite and cute. We had a balcony. We could see the ocean and the mountains. It was very, very cool. In Santorini, I would recommend Petros Villa. It's based in Fira, which is the downtown area on Santorini. It made it very, very easy to get everywhere. The owner was extremely polite. There was outside access. We had a really good experience with Petros Villa. What are some good foods to try while in Greece? All of them. Eat everything. Specifically, I would recommend grilled octopus, calamari, braised lamb with fresh pasta, grilled saganaki cheese, komares, the Greek donuts that are soaked in honey, those. Moussaka, souvlaki, and there's a lot of different types. So if you don't eat pork, there's also chicken and things like that. Lamb kleftiko, pork gyros, Greek scrambled eggs, Greek coffee, and Greek pizza. I honestly, there's just something about Mediterranean food that is just beyond lovely. I have basically no complaints about the food that I ate in Greece. Everything was divine. There was a cat at almost every single meal that I had. It just made the entire culinary experience exceptional. Greece was absolutely phenomenal. There was actually so much more to see than I had time. I went to a very, very small area of mainland Greece. There's a lot of stuff in Athens that I missed. So I definitely need to go back, particularly to Crete, because I was barely in Crete 2 days, which was just completely unacceptable. If you do want to be able to plan your next vacation and keep it as organized as possible, I do highly recommend my Ultimate Travel Planner Notion template. It keeps all of your trips, research, loyalty numbers, and more in a centralized location just to keep everything nice and neat. It has been test driven multiple times with trips of my own, so I know it works well. I highly recommend you check it out, and it does come with a complete video tutorial, a link in the description below. Please give this video a like, comment, and subscribe, as it really does help the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!
Slow down, hold on tight now. It's okay to meet me at the front line. I've got cold feet, winter